Can you hear me all right? Yeah. All right. My name is Mike McNally. Welcome to the Chamber of Commerce's Candidate Forum here at the library. Before we begin, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all our candidates who showed up here tonight, to our guests, members of the communities. It is a wonderful thing to live in a community that is engaged. Now, about tonight, this event is not a debate. It's rather an opportunity for each candidate to articulate their views and plans to the benefit of our local business community. To that end, the candidates have received the questions beforehand and had a chance to work out their answers. None of the questions, as you'll see, are anything that would be gotchas. They're all questions that you would expect these folks to be asked. And I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say with all of these questions. But to ensure a smooth and respectful atmosphere, I would ask you to don't heckle the candidates as they're working out on their answers that they've worked so hard to elaborate. So keep it respectful. Finally, candidates. I know that our timekeeper here today, Christine Whitehouse from Visit Corvallis, is here to keep you on task. She has been provided with 3 colored pieces of paper. The green one means you're good to go. This one means you have 15 seconds and you wrap it out. If the red card comes up, and I vow I will do this, if the red card comes up, I will shut you up immediately. Oh, you'll hear the bell too. So we'll begin with candidate introductions, and then we'll go to the questions. The order in which the candidates, this is true, I was impressed when I heard this, the order in which the candidates will answer each question was actually generated apparently by a random number generator to make sure that there's complete fairness in the order that these folks go. And in these sessions I've done in the past, it's been basically, Liz, you start, and then Dave, you go next. But this is more complicated. So it seems like we're bouncing around with who answers questions when. That's why. It's a random number generator. My hat is off to the organizers. I never would have thought of anything like that, but it's cool. It's cool. So let's start with the introductions. And the random number generator has told us that, Sarah, you are the first to go. And you have, I think, 2 minutes for these introductions.
Okay, so I'm Sarah Finger McDonald. I am running to represent Corvallis in District 16 in the Oregon House. I'm a mother of 2. I do serve on the Corvallis School Board. I have a PhD in horticulture. I am a founder of the Oregon chapter of Moms Demand Action. And, I know the joys and the challenges of raising a family in Corvallis. I'm really proud to have the support and endorsement of a lot of our local leaders in this campaign. And that includes, among others, our state senator, Sarah Gelser-Bluen, our current mayor, and 2 previous mayors, the majority of our city council and school board, along with local business owners. The top issues that I want to work on really are things that support our community and families and businesses. I want to make sure that our small businesses are supported. I want to work on housing to make sure that we have affordable housing for our workforce, and address homelessness so that everyone in our community is supported and feels safe. I want to make investments in our child care system, because not only is that an investment in the children who are cared for, but it's an investment in the infrastructure that allows workers to go to work. And I want to work on our education system and make sure we have a system that works for all of our students, K through whatever path they want to take after high school. And that we are creating educated workers going forward. I am a cancer survivor. I worked very hard on the commitments I have. I served on the school board through 2 rounds of cancer without missing meetings unless I was in the hospital.
Thank you for Saka. Saka, you are next.
Thank you. I'm one of those who like to stand and do the eye contact. So if there are rules to not say no, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am, where I come from, but also what I stand for. I hope in the next 2 minutes we'll get to know each other a little bit more. And a few questions we'll get to know about where we need to go. I am the product of so many triumphs and challenges. And I'll start with my grandmother, Teta. She took care of me when I needed the help. I was needing to learn the language in 3 months. She taught me the language. I was able to read, speak, and recite the Quran. I was able to go to a public school in a foreign country where I did not know the language. That level of care is public service to me. That level of care is the care that I want us to continue to provide for each child in our community, for each senior in our community, for every worker and every business in our community. That's who I am. I'm not only a local school board member who is, to make it very clear, endorsed by every school board member who's now on this stage, the chair, Louis White Bear, exclusively, Therese Jones exclusively, and other school board members, but also by 10 legislators who said, we're ready to work with you, Sami. All of them are Democrats. Also endorsed by more than 150 folks from our local community across the state and the nation. Why? Because I know how to get work done. It's not only about the values that we may share on this stage, but it is about someone with the experience to deliver on this work. So I really look forward to connect with you and to really tackle the challenging questions in front of us, where Corvallis and Oregon should go in the next 2 years and beyond.
That's right. Gabe gets to
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Gabe Shepard. I'm a candidate for Benton County Commissioner, position 2. I grew up in Junction City, not terribly far from here. I grew up rural. Corvallis is the first city that I've ever lived in, and I like to joke around that when I first moved here, stoplights weirded me out, because you could go from my place to my high school, no stoplights, no stop signs. So this is the first city I've lived in. But I came to Corvallis to go to OSU. I got a degree in industrial engineering, proceeded to work as an engineer for about a year and realized that that's not what I wanted to do with my life. I was more interested in public service. So I left, departed my job, got hired on by the city of Corvallis, the city of Newport, and the city of Albany as a contracted minutes recorder, meaning I got really engaged in what was going on in our region, all across our region. I now work for the city of Albany. I'm their deputy city clerk, and I'm a Corvallis city councilor since 2020. I have been really engaged locally, and I believe you can see that in who supports me for this run for office. Former Congressman Peter DeFazio, our local AFL-CIO, the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. Just last week, I was declared a Moms Demand Action gun sentence candidate, and I have endorsements from current and former city councilors from Corvallis, Monroe, Philomath, and Albany. So I really think that the vision that I have for the county going forward, which is one of climate action, affordable housing, and public engagement, is going to serve us well over the next 4 years, and I hope that I can earn your vote.
Hi, I'm Liz Irish. I'm running for position 2 county commissioner for Benton County. I too grew up in rural Oregon. I'm from Southern Oregon originally, and I relocated here in 2013 with my family. I love it here. This is probably the most beautiful place I've ever lived, and the last 11 years of my life have been the best. I really feel like we live in a utopia, someplace that a lot of people will never be able to live. I live with my parents currently, well, they live with me, and my youngest daughter, 21, who currently is fighting some mental illness. So we're kind of this great social experiment that Americans are going under today. I've been politically active my entire life. It has been something that I like to call professional meddling. I've been inserting myself wherever there's been a need, regardless of whether people think there's a need. If I find a need or a hole, I'm really passionate about filling in it. I have done my formal political life, has been campaigning. I was a campaign manager for Mayor Johnson in Albany, and I did his housing policy, which Governor Kotek just came down and congratulated him on. He's doing the best in the state currently. I'm a current member of the Planning Commission for Benton County. I'm a current Budget Committee member. And I have been so fortunate and blessed to be part of those committees. We have been working together tirelessly to tackle housing, and we currently have a housing subcommittee that we're working on. That's going to be a regional effort, and the governor's office and many others are involved. So I look forward to sharing more about myself in the coming hour, and I look forward to talking to anybody afterwards.
Next, you're next.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you to the Chamber and the sponsors for hosting this event. I am Nancy Wise, and I am proud to be your County Commissioner, Position 3, as well as the only Democrat running for the seat. Previous to the County Commission, I served on the county's Planning Commission and Budget Committee. I served 2 terms on the Corvallis City Council. During my tenure on the council, we adopted the Climate Action Plan, the 2040 Vision, the Transportation Service Plan. We stood up the HOPE Board, the Home Opportunity Planning and Equity Advisory Board. We adopted the Buildable Lands Inventory, which entailed rezoning dozens of acres of land to high-density residential to pave the path forward for those 405 units of affordable housing that we hear coming online in Corvallis. Yay, Corvallis! As your county commissioner, I have been a champion for government transparency, economic development, prudent land use, and good partnerships with the cities. One example being the city of Adair Village, assisting them with their urban growth boundary expansion so that they can build more housing. Other work that I'm proud of that the county is doing right now is that we have planned and full funding for a new mental health crisis center, an emergency operations center, and a new courthouse. And we just purchased a new building to move and expand our children and families mental health program. I am very happy that I've been able to come to work day after day for the past 3+ years alongside the amazing team at Benton County. I'm excited to serve 4 more years for you with a focus on homelessness, mental health, planning, and climate and environmental justice. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, everybody. I would be the token non-Democrat in the panel here, just to point that out. So, in the next 5 years, I think we're going to go through kind of a turmoil time. If you look at what's happening, we'll talk more about that. But I think I probably have the skill sets to best address some of that. I have about 50 years of experience in management and in leadership, solving extremely difficult problems, some of which we probably haven't seen yet, but we will. In extremely difficult places with extremely difficult people, and done it quite successfully. My education, I have a Bachelor of Science in Management from West Point, Master's of Science in General Administration from Central Michigan, and I just completed a doctorate in Business Administration and Public Administration. I started it when I was in Afghanistan and came back. I grew up in Fort Belknap, Montana. I know and lived in the middle of abject poverty, low rent housing. I saw what it did and how it destroyed communities. People grew up, they have no investment. They gave their rent away because the government gave it to them. That's no way to live a life in the future. That's not the answer. There's other answers. After graduating from the military academy, I had the pleasure of serving in about 20 other countries. Most of the failing governments. I know what good policy is. I know what bad policy is. I know what good governance is. I know what bad governance is. I know that short-term great solutions that lead to bad-term, long-term problems isn't the way to go. Shortly after retirement, I went to Afghanistan. I taught and advised governors, provincial governors, security forces, and our own people on counterinsurgency, governance, security, politics, economics, everything from figuring out how to get ambulance running in cities to dealing with corruption in the Ministry of Defense. I was involved with it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, candidates. First question. And Sammy, I believe you answer this one first. Expenses are outpacing revenue relative to the state and the county levels. What are your budget priorities? How would you plan to fund those?
what my budget priorities, as your next state's representative, I need to reflect our budget's priorities. As a steward for the state, representative and delegates of the district, we need to really elevate the needs of our community. And if you knock on door, and I knocked on many, I see some faces here that I actually met at the front porch, you will hear that housing and homelessness are the top issue. We need to have the courage to address it, not just talk about it. We need to support our businesses to thrive. We need to make sure the essential services that our communities depend on are predictable, are sustainable, and provided for everybody who needs them. Now, that's not going to be easy. Now, if I understand the question correctly, the state always balances budgets. They don't print no money, just like the federal government, right? You've got to balance your budgets. So when we end up in a situation where we have to ration or we have to prioritize the essential services for our community members, making sure the cost of living increases for our teachers, educators, staff, and public schools are picking up with the inflation. These are huge issues. We are at a breaking point right now. Our businesses are telling us we need to really change how we're addressing homelessness in a way that is still compassionate but assertive to make sure the services are available for folks. These are the issues that I will be elevating. It's not about my priorities, it's about a representative who has an experience in business. I'm a business owner, former business owner, someone who have done now more than a decade of budgeting in public service and in nonprofits, who understands that when we have limited resources, we need to put the resources where they are needed most. So that's the lens that you're gonna see in me. And that's why I have the support of the ones who are going to build Oregon's and Corvallis houses, the carpenters, the building trades, every single building trade union who have endorsed me. And the contractors on the other side. It's rarely you see both sides of the equation, but they say, Sami, we agree that you will be the person who can be ready to deliver on the housing crisis and homelessness on day one in terms of not only ideas, but bringing all stakeholders to the table. So the way I elevate those priorities is exactly that, making sure the stakeholders are there, your voice is reflected, and we make decisions that work for our districts and work for the whole state.
Right, thank you. I think the most important thing to think about when we're talking about expenditures and how they're outpacing revenues is we need to think about partnerships. Because we need to think about how what we do here in Benton County, I'm running for county commissioner, how that affects our local jurisdictions, and what the state does affects the budgets of our local governments. So when we are talking about funding things, we cannot think in isolation. There are long-standing laws in Oregon, changes to our Constitution, Measure 5 and Measure 50, that severely restrict the ability of local governments to adequately fund themselves. This changes to them, anything like that, requires partnerships at the state level. So, and that's where I think that I can excel. As I mentioned before, I have many endorsements from lots of different organizations, and one that I didn't mention is state legislators. I have the public endorsement of 4 state legislators, and I know and have worked with many of them through my connections as chair of the Benton County Democrats and through the party. I think that we really need to look at how we do things in partnership. Also, when we're talking about budget priorities, those are local things. I think the county has done a good job, but can do a better job prioritizing funding for our health services, for mental health, and partnering, again, that word, with nonprofits to help ease the housing crisis and homelessness crisis here locally. I really think that when we talk about money and when we talk about the county's approach to getting money, it really needs to be about partnerships and engagement.
Thank you. I expected you to go another minute, but that's okay.
No.
Nancy is next.
I would say the short answer to this question is priorities and partnerships. The long answer is yes, inflation is a thing. Material costs, fuel costs, et cetera, it's going up. But property tax revenue has increased every year as well. Our reserves are at a best practice level, and our credit rating with Moody's is great. It's an AA1, very strong. I'll acknowledge that the past decade, local governments have been dealing with PERS costs and health insurance costs on the rise. But the county took out a PERS bond and opened a PERS side account, which has defrayed those financial impacts. As for healthcare costs, the county is self-insured, which has also saved money. It's also worth noting that the state and federal resources Benton County is receiving for 2024 is over $17 million. It is fair to say, though, that there will never be enough money for everything that we want to do. We have to live within our budget. It really is about priorities and partnerships, which is why one of my goals is about planning. For example, I think we need to develop a 5-year strategic plan instead of relying on the 2-year budget process time and time again. A strategic plan will focus our priorities and increase transparency because community members can easily see what we're working on and how much progress we've made. Next, homelessness. It is a big, big issue, and the county cannot move the needle alone. We need to continue to work with our partners, all of the cities in Benton County, community services consortiums, nonprofits, the state and federal governments, because this is an issue everywhere, not just Benton County. We have the 12 HOPE Board recommendations. We have a roadmap. We just need the political will to move forward with more of the recommendations. For example, recommendation number 7, the Navigation Center. We have heard that the community wants a Navigation Center, but it needs to be funded through partnerships and most likely state and federal contributions. Next, mental health, behavioral health. Again, this is an issue everywhere, but we know what the challenges are. Access to care, stigma, substance abuse, crisis response, workplace stress and burnout, youth mental health, trauma and PTSD. Again, we know what we need to do. It's just a matter of systematically chipping away at these challenges. Lastly, climate justice. We need to update our climate action plan to include things like embedded carbon that better reflect our actual greenhouse gas emissions.
That's right. Sarah, you're next.
Yeah, every year as a school board member and a member of the budget committee for our district, I have to work to balance our budget. And when budgets are tight, we have to rely on our values and rely on investments on programs that have the most impact on our students. As a state legislator, those are lessons that are important for me to take with us. I know that with good oversight and good management, large projects can get done within budgets and on time. We saw that with our school bond project that just was completed, on budget and on time, despite the challenges of completing that work during the pandemic. So, as a legislature, I know that I will lean on the values of this community, and I will focus on the values of building our community and supporting working families here. And that includes investments in childcare, because that's really supporting and investing in the future of children and investing in the ability of families to work. Education, where we need to make sure we have an education system that works for all of our students and for all of our teachers. We need to address housing. We need to have affordable housing to build our workforces and to make sure that families can come to Corvallis to live. And we must address homelessness. It is an essential issue that has to be dealt with to make sure that everyone in Corvallis is safe and is cared for. And we need to make sure that we have services available to make sure that small businesses and new businesses have the support and we have the investments in our community to allow them to thrive.
The mic goes over to Liz next.
The current budget demands are sizable, and I think we're at a point where they will continue to outpace the tax revenue here in Benton County. We've heard it before, Benton County is the second least affordable county in the state of Oregon currently, and Corvallis is ranked as the least affordable city in Corvallis. And that's because we haven't built any homes really. Our families are moving out of town, they're going to other communities, and the tax revenues are not increasing in Corvallis. We don't have the people available to work the jobs that we need. We don't have our priorities correct from where I sit. Currently, as a budget committee member, I watched every department head come to the table with requests that were either denied or hopefully deferred to the next year because there just wasn't enough money. Previously, we had COVID funds that helped fund things, and we had more money than we'd dealt with before, but we're still short. We need to work on coming up with a way to increase revenues in this county so that we have enough for everybody. I agree that we need partnerships, and those partnerships can look like businesses that own land in our community that are demanding workforce housing to contribute with their land inventories that they currently own. This doesn't have to be a one-way street where Benton County gives and the businesses take. I think we need to help businesses thrive, but we have to do that together hand in hand. I think that as we move forward, we have to work as a community because nobody pulls themselves up from their bootstraps. It's more of a village. So going forward, I would say we have to partner with state and federal legislators. We need to ask for more congressional spending packages, and we need to use the funds that are available to us as much as possible. There's a lot of money on the table still from COVID. There's also some monies available for businesses that haven't been reached, and I think that we can do that together.
Keith, you are up this round.
Preparing for resiliency is my first priority for citizens and businesses. That means roads, public works, sheriff, DA, juvenile, community health centers, all which ironically are pretty much funded. The problem is 34% of the county's revenues are from federal and state grants. The state has 35 to 40% of their revenue coming from the federal government, which goes into this. Two of them, American Rescue Plan and CARES, has already come to an end. Therefore, our county is tied directly to the fortunes of the U.S. federal budget. In light of the current persistent inflation, it's going to continue with no change to the energy plan, increasing national debt, the creation of BRICS, entanglement and constant wars in two different places in the world. There's going to be problems. Organizations must be able to absorb external blows and shock while needing to maintain core functions. So to maintain the current slew of services, we have to increase the general fund to replace the diminishing federal and state funds. And by the way, our partners are having the same problems in the middle. Or let things fall off. Instead of letting things fall off, this year's budget has an increase, a 17% increase in fees and 12% expected increase in the general revenue in the fund and levy. We can't continue doing that to our people. 20% of our citizens live in poverty. The average county wage is $39K, with take-home being around $34K. They cannot live on a day per day at that level with average prices for housing, average prices for cars, having prices for insurance. Our health insurance has gone up faster than any other state, by the way. But meanwhile, we still want them to continue paying for more. They live day to day and they can't afford to do it, and no one's listening to them. 50% of our citizens. Plenty of studies show that stress and financial risk and not having a purpose in life creates mental health problems, hence the mental health problems. Meanwhile, what do? We pour more money from them to put into mental health to take care of them, so we just took money away and are having mental health problems because they don't have money. Got it. Raising fees or taxes even by $150 is extremely painful to them. So now we're going to get the businesses right. Our businesses are not in much better shape. We have the 13th highest business taxes in the nation. 615 bills were signed by the governor last year, and none of them giving money back to the businesses or deregulating anything. A survey by the Oregon Business Industrials taken a few months ago from a few months ago showed 41% of our businesses in this state are considering closing, selling, or moving because of taxes and or Oregon's regulatory environment, and nobody is listening to them. That means we must use time to have grants and partners to continue trying to survive, but we have to start increasing our general revenue. You do that through increase of business. Thank you.
That wraps up the first question. This is a forum, as you might notice, sponsored by the Corvallis Chamber of Commerce. So this next question, candidates, is one you may not pick up at any other forum in Corvallis this season. It's our money question. How will you engage with the business community to understand their needs and priorities? And how will you incorporate their input into policy-making decisions?
Right, and I'm starting this one off. All right. Well, one of the key planks of my platform for my race as county commissioner is public engagement. And I am sincerely committed to that. If you go to my website, you'll see that one of my policy commitments is a town hall in every community every year. And one of those annual town halls I would be happy to have as a town hall to engage our local businesses communities, hosted by chambers, Philomath, Corvallis, Albany. I think that, as many people in this room will attest, the needs of businesses, while similar to the needs of individuals, are not exactly the same. But one thing that I think we can all agree on about a need in our community and a need for businesses is the cost of healthcare, especially employee-provided healthcare from our small businesses. I am personally a supporter of a single-payer healthcare solution, which, according to a report from the Oregon state government, would save our state over $980 million. I think a lot of that savings would be absorbed by our local businesses who have to currently pay those fees and costs. I think that, our local businesses have needs that I'm happy and eager to listen to as I go through my public engagement process. One of my other planks on my platform is county meetings. For those of you who don't know, the county currently meets typically at 9 a.m. on Tuesdays. It is hard for working people to attend those meetings and engage with the county. So it's not just going to be incumbent upon us going out and engaging the business community annually or however often we can, but it's also would be incumbent upon the county to change their process to make their systems and their government more available to the average person and more available to the business owners who work 9 to 5, can't take a day off to go because they're the ones who run their businesses. Thank you.
Keith, your next question.
So I'm going to start with a little survey out here. How many of you were involved in Corvallis 2040 or 2040 Thriving Communities as small business people, small business owners? That's my point. The most important stakeholders in this community for growth, for housing, for anything, are going to be the businesses that bring money into the community, and they are not invited to the two major planning conferences at the county and the municipal level. And we talk about communicating with business owners. We don't actively go out to talk to them. We have 1,000 web pages all over the state, community, and the county and the city. I mean, thousands of them. They're professional web pages, paid a lot of money went to a lot of people to build these web pages, and they're great. And they have all kinds of information, requests, and help from all these business owners. And like the business owner has 6 hours a day to go through every website to find out what's going to attack his business next from one agency or the other. They don't have time. Every day you guys are getting text messages, right, from candidates directed at you to give money to them. And yet our government can't figure out how to give a text message to a local owner saying, oh, by the way, there's going to be a committee meeting up in Salem that's going to be talking about your enterprise. You might want to look and see what it is. Not a single one. But we'll get it to the candidates, but we won't get it to the business owners. And we talk about communicating business. How do you communicate? You go out and see them eye to eye. Local governments are supposed to talk to the business and they're supposed to be the people that represent the businesses to the higher governments. That's government 101. That's why the Constitution limited the power of the central government and gave it to the local, because at the local government, you got to look at each other in the eye and express why you're not talking to each other. And we don't do it. We sit in this conference and talk about this. Have a coffee with the business owner someday. You know, there's business owners sitting here, well, not necessarily in here, but that I've talked to, who won't give a personal opinion in this community because they're afraid of being doxxed by other business owners. And you talk about communication. No, you communicate them by positive, direct communication, not passive. You go out and you find them and you get them involved. And you do it with coffee. I would like to go to 15 locations around this county. Each one of these committees, each one of these commissioners, got to check, go to like, they totally go to like 31 little meetings all around the country, right, or the state. I mean, if you add up all the places where these people go, it's amazing. They go to 31 little different conferences, right? And they come up with all these great decisions. And how many business owners are in each of those conferences? 0. We got to get them involved, and you got to actively get them involved, and you got to want them to be involved. Thank you.
You're next.
Thank you, Mike, for the question. How we will engage, or how I am engaging with the business community, and as your next state representative, I'll be elevating your priorities as a business owner or business member of the business community. It's an important question, Mike, and I believe the way I can show and demonstrate that I'm walking the walk is actually sharing what I've done. For this forum, I've reached out to members of the business community, shared those questions with them. They shared with me somewhere between 5 minutes and an hour of feedback. More questions we need to ask about what are we doing about the housing crisis? How can we afford for our workforce to be able to live in our community? The healthcare coverage, how can we help folks who work in a small business or a medium business to really be able to access healthcare? When legislation passes like the FMLA, how the rollout is going to impact my business in a way that is efficient rather than inefficient. Those are the questions that we need to ask, and those are the questions that I am engaging in, making sure your voice is there, not only in how I prepare for forums like this one, but also in how I legislate. Here's some examples. As your school board member and former chair of the school board, current president of Oregon School Board Association, I have done that. When OSBA was leading the work on the corporate excise tax, we did reach out to the business community, and it was reformed because of the business community feedback. Not everybody was happy with it, but being on the table, it's past the finish line. And I can tell you, the system now we're living in is not sustainable for a very important parts in Corvallis and in Oregon. We need to actually share our values that business is good. Business is how we have jobs. Business is how many of us, all of us, pay taxes, whether as business tax or individual tax as members of the workforce, unless you're in public service, in a public institution. My message here, Oregon should be open for business. Oregon should be a thriving place for businesses. And dare I say, Corvallis should be open for business. That should not be a bad word. And your voice is going to be really important as your next state representative. I want your counsel. And I have shown that track record. When there is a blind spot in any legislation, education, housing, civil rights, I ask those questions of legislators and stakeholders and tell them, did you ask so-and-so or this group that is impacted by the legislation? And we see amendments that gets us toward a better resolution or a better budget or a better policy because of that. So that's how I'll do it.
Stop. Liz gets the microphone next.
This is a really important point, and I think it gets lost on a lot of people who've been in public service for a long time. I've been a commission employee my entire adult life. I've been hustle culture from the beginning. I've not been a public servant. I haven't worked in public service. I've helped those in public service. But I've been hustling and networking in parts of B&I groups and networking alongside of every business owner and alongside of every commission salesperson out there. I ask questions and I listen. There's two very important parts. It's not just about listening. You have to sit down, you have to have coffee, you have to visit with the individuals and ask them what they need. Oftentimes, it's been my experience, however, that what we need is already out there. We just can't connect the dots. I hear often that we need some kind of job position to kind of gather all of the stakeholders and convene everything. I really think that you would all be surprised if you had the time that a lot of those things are available. And so that's how I view myself as county commissioner. I view myself as that person who may not have all the answers, but I know where to get the answers and I know who has the answers. We can't all be pros at everything. We can't know every item for every business. We can't know every incentive. We can't know every program. But we can work together to figure that out to help each other. We can hold each other up as businesses, and we can promote each other as businesses. Corvallis and Benton County need to be pro-business. Corvallis and Benton County need to be pro all sizes of business, not just small business, but we also need to take care of our small businesses as well.
Nancy, this is the question next.
First, I want to make it clear that it's not my job to tell the business community what they need. It's my job to ask, how can you be supported? What can we do to better support you? And when it comes to Benton County as a whole, what works for Corvallis does not work for Monroe or Deer Village. And what works for unincorporated Benton County does not work for Corvallis. So the first part of that question, how do I engage? I am the liaison to the Philomath Chamber of Commerce, and just recently now also to the Corvallis Chamber of Commerce. I did used to be the city council liaison to the Corvallis Chamber, so I'm happy to get back to that role as a commissioner. These are both opportunities for me to listen and learn. I'm also the commission liaison for the cities of Deer Village, Monroe, and Philomath. That opportunity has given me a lot of time to build relationships with the mayors and the city councilors and to learn about their needs. Like, how's your urban renewal project going? Who is coming to your city council meetings? What are they asking for? The next part of that question is, let's see, let me back up. The county also partners with the city of Corvallis for the Joint Economic Development Office, and I'm the liaison to the Economic Development Coalition, formerly the Economic Development Advisory Board and the Economic Vitality Partnership. And I previously served in that role as a city councilor as well. I also served on the Cascade West Economic Development District Executive Committee, which is a regional board. Those are all ways for me to engage with the business community and to work on economic development. So the next part of that question is, how will I incorporate input into policy-making decisions? The answer to that is the same way that I make every decision. I consider all the information. I think about the impacts and the costs and the potential unintended consequences. I have put in countless hours of my time in the past 7+ years to support economic development. 4 of those years I did it for free as an unpaid city councilor. I have no plans of stopping now. Thank you.
Sarah, you were up.
Thank you. Yeah, having lived in Corvallis for a long time and raised kids here, I have relationships with business owners in Corvallis and in our district. And I reach out to them and talk to them about what their concerns are and what the issues are that are impacting their ability to do business here. But I also think it's really important to build relationships with organizations like the Chamber, with your Government Affairs Committee, with your Director, Christy Woods, so that I can have a good understanding and good relationship with people that I can reach out to when I have questions about policies or want to know how things are affecting you. We have great businesses in Corvallis. We have unique businesses in our community. We have things like Greenhouse Coffee, where I can go get my horticultural soul met while meeting my caffeine needs. And We also know that those businesses are struggling. Our downtown businesses are having a hard time, and we're seeing the loss of institutions like Robinette's Hardware. So I am going, in its lessons I've learned from serving this community, it is really important to intentionally reach out to the people who your decisions are going to impact, to intentionally reach out and make sure that you hear the voices that need to be heard. And I will do that as your state representative. I will reach out and understand how policies that I'm making decisions on are going to impact you, and I will ensure that our businesses in our district have the support they need to succeed.
Hang on to the microphone, you open up the third round here. And here's question 3. What specific incentives or programs would you support to attract new businesses and encourage existing businesses to expand within our community?
As I just said, I really value the businesses we have in our community, and we need to make sure we have a business community and an environment where they can come and establish business, where people can come and establish businesses, and those businesses can grow. And in order for that to happen, and in order for businesses to come here and flourish, we need to make sure we have housing available for their workforce. We need to make sure we have a community where families can afford to come and raise their children. I've seen in my time serving on the school board that our enrollment numbers have decreased because young families are not moving to our community. So affordable housing is really key, and it's a critical piece. And I want to address that by making sure we have strong investments in the infrastructure we need to support the building of housing to meet the needs of our workforce. That we're investing in improvements in roads and improvements in our infrastructure, like our water treatment plant, so that we can build sustainable communities that serve our families now and into the future, and allow businesses to come locate here because they can afford to live here. We also need to really address homelessness in our community. Our downtown businesses are constantly dealing with the side effects of being in a community with a large unhoused population. We need to invest in the support and the shelter that's necessary to bring people into shelter and to give them the services and care they need to be housed and stay housed. We want everyone in our community to be safe and to feel like they're part of the community and that they're supported. In addition to that, small businesses and any businesses that want to come here to set up shop have a hard time navigating all the regulations that are in place at our state and local level. I will work to ensure that our businesses that come to our community and into our district have the support they need to make establishing a business here as simple as possible.
I think one of the biggest ways we can support local business is to have the cities build more workforce housing. If you have a business, you need employees need a place to live. And I did say cities because density goes in the cities, not in the rural areas where we are preserving our forest resource zones. We, the county and the cities, could examine our industrial zones to see what is working, what isn't, what we need to change. I also think it's important that the county doesn't duplicate efforts. We want to leverage our dollars through partnerships. As I've mentioned, the county partners with the city of Corvallis for our joint economic development office. For the fiscal years of 2024 and 2025, the county is contributing more than $300,000. Some of that money is pass-through dollars to support RAIN and the LBCC Small Business Development Center. We should continue to support the organizations that are the experts in doing the work. When Nate Conroy comes and asks for our support, we say, yes, of course, we support you, and thank you for asking. As I mentioned, I'm on the CWED, the Cascades West Economic Development District Executive Committee, which, by the way, is one of my 22 committee assignments as a county commissioner. In that role, I have voted to support numerous economic development efforts. Just this week, I supported a broadband deployment grant for Pioneer Connect in Philomath. If they get that grant, they will have a big work project. They will have employees who are getting paid a good wage. And in this case, broadband internet service, those rural areas, that is a win-win. As I have said, I have been a champion of this work, and I have no plans to stop.
Liz gets the microphone next.
Incentive programs are great, but you have to know about them. As a past small business owner, I know how difficult it can be to pull together all of your resources and your time and your energy when you're putting in the hours. And my job as commissioner may not be about pushing a particular incentive program. We have a lot of League of Oregon Cities, DLCD, Department of Land and Conservation and Development. We have the state of Oregon itself, which has a bunch of networking and incentive programs out there. But my job should be not identifying those individual programs for every business. It should be as a facilitator and advocate for business. I think all incentives should be utilized. And I think everyone should have a transparent access to it, and I think we should stop gatekeeping those services. I think a lot of times people just don't know because we're not talking about it. There's something about holding on to that information and not sharing. And I'm going to go back to the communication, the sharing, the working together to promote our fellow businesses and sharing the information that we need to get those incentives. I think a great example of this would be, I had a conversation with Ryan McAllister, who's the president of Girding recently, and we identified that he has a shortcoming in supplying minority-owned businesses. And so he can't complete his jobs unless we have enough minority-owned businesses in the mid and southern Willamette valleys. He has to get most of those from the Portland area, and those slow down housing projects, commercial projects, and they also increase costs. And we don't need an incentive program to fix that. We just need cooperation between our community colleges and our business owners to bring up and mentor those minority-owned businesses so they can fill those gaps. So while incentives and connections with programs are really important, I do think just being a good neighbor to your fellow business person and talking and finding out what those needs are, we can fill those without any state or federal funds. We don't always need to look to the state and the federal government to solve our problems. We can do it, and we can do it without taxes, and we can do it without increasing fees. We can do it just by being nice to each other and sharing. And that's where I would like to encourage it. I want to be that advocate, I want to be that cheerleader, and I want to be the path for every business and future business to get what they need, and that's by communicating and sharing and not gatekeeping.
Keith, you're next.
All right, thanks. So I support any and all incentive programs for anything to do with business, but I think we've got to look at some. In 2003, when I moved here, you know what the 3 priorities of the County Commission were? Because I actually went back and looked through those. They were housing, livable pay, and business growth. 20 years later, hundreds and hundreds of conferences, hundreds and hundreds of meetings, hundreds and hundreds. I mean, there's 5 different state programs to build businesses. Why do they all fail? Why isn't all these businesses rolling into the county? It's called capital. And anybody who has anything knowledge of business knows it's called capital. The same people that give all these incentives are the same people who are taking away the capital for the people to use to grow. And not only that, but the one organization, the one big program in the state for capital has strings attached to it that have to do with ethnicity, gender, and everything else, which automatically deletes 45% of our population in this county. So, I mean, at some point, we've got to get crafty, right? If you want growth, you got to let businesses have capital and grow. And so we have to do that. And we have to be the advocate for that. We can't follow the line, the party lines, because we want to get reelected and get more money from people. We can't fall in line with an ideology. We need to fall in line with what our people in the county need. We have 50% of our population is that far from going bankrupt on a daily basis. And we're sitting in this meeting talking about all these incentives. I can't have an incentive if I have no capital and I have no growth and I can't get any more employees and I can't give them a raise. You want to solve the housing problem? Get it up to about $50,000 a person. That'll solve the housing problem. Then they can afford houses. How do you do that? Well, you got to have enough jobs that pay that much. How do you do that? It's going to be the businesses that do that. It doesn't work from top down. In Afghanistan, we had thousands and thousands, almost $1 trillion poured into Afghanistan from top down. All the king's men, all the king's horses couldn't figure out how to put it back together again. The Taliban won because they were listening to the people. We at the top, with all the money and the power and the conferences and everything else and the experts, we lost because we weren't listening to the people who needed it the worst. People who need it the worst right now in the business community are the businessmen. Let's listen to what they need. They don't need incentives, they need their capital. So let's get it to them. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike, for the question. This is one of the questions I really wanted to lean in on my friends and colleagues and folks who are really going to benefit from those incentives the most. And I heard a lot. Number one, before we talk about incentives, let's talk about the responsibility of the state and the city and the community toward businesses. I'm hearing about business owners really worrying about shutting down before it gets dark, so their workers can go safe to the parking lot and be able to drive home. We're talking about people getting their cars carjacked and in our community. We're talking about the need to really tackle the homelessness issue in downtown that's impacting businesses. People are really closing their shops because of it. What I mean here, as your state's legislature, I need to be your voice, your delegate, and also the trustee who makes the best decisions in terms of investments, in terms of policies that make things work. And right now, we are at a breaking point where the sustainability of doing business, sustainability of having a thriving community might be at risk if we can't really address those issues. Housing insecurity, workforce housing that you have heard from my colleagues is going to be a huge priority, especially in industries or sectors that are really at challenge right now, including our educators, childcare providers. If it costs you an equivalent of a second mortgage to get your kid for childcare, we have a problem. You will have scarcity of workforce and a gender inequity because of that. That's what I want to really work with you on. Not the incentives list that I have in front of me right now, but really your voice on what we need to do to make things work. And there's a difference between saying things and showing a track record of doing it. I have done that work. At the school board, we led on MUPTI with the city to make sure that we have a way to develop more housing and provide tax credits or tax breaks for developers as long as they commit that the end result is going to be affordable, high quality housing for people. Statewide, I made sure that really we work with stakeholders who will help businesses thrive in communities that need it. That's why I'm endorsed by folks who know that Sami gets the work done. And Sami doesn't think the best ideas come from his mind. The best ideas come from those who are impacted by the work. So I really hope I can count on your support so we really can invest the resources where they are needed most so your business can thrive.
All right. So just because it's been a long time since the question was asked, specific incentives or programs you would support to attract new businesses. Well, Sami did just say an incentive that the city led, and I want to thank both school board members who are up here today for voting to support that, which is MUPTI and LERPTI, which are some of the most fun things that you can say when you're in local government. Multi-unit property tax exemption and low-income property tax exemption. These are investments, tax breaks for developers so that we can incentivize more housing, which, as you know, I don't need to repeat what everyone up here has already said. Housing is super critical for our local, for our region. So that's something that, as a counselor, city councilor for the city of Corvallis, I supported, I voted for. The way there's a few things that the county can do to invest in housing as well. I've been talking to some local farmers who, yes, there are restrictions, rightfully so, that protect our farmland, but there are farmers out there who want a small workforce housing on their farms so that the people who work on their farms can live there, that they don't have to find an unaffordable place to live in the city of Corvallis or out really far away from the farms that they work at. They can wake up, they can go do their work, and they can live in what we would consider here an ADU. I think that's something that the county has control over and has the ability to change. So one thing that Sarah was talking about earlier was investments. And I think that the county is going to be a leader in investments locally that will help businesses thrive. Investments in mental health services, investments in housing, those are things that, while not completely under county jurisdiction, the county has a lot of sway and a lot of hold over. And I think that the last thing that local governments really need to do, not the last thing, but the last thing on my list, is investments in buildings and places where businesses can grow. It's a big need that we have locally, that businesses can start here because there's lots of different opportunities between the HP campus and OSU for businesses to be created and start, people to come up with great ideas, and then they look around and they're like, we can't develop here in Corvallis or in Albany or in Philomath because there's not locations for us to grow to, so they leave. And we have so many great businesses that started here at OSU that I think that the city of Corvallis and that the county can do more to keep them here in our region.
And that brings us to, I think, is our last question of the evening. Keith, you go first with this question. It is, what is your vision for the future of our county or state? And what specific goals do you hope to accomplish during your term in office?
Utopia, that's my vision. A balance, politically, economic, social, culture. A true diversity is a balance of all of those things. You need a diversity of new ideas from everyone. Not just from a certain group of people or those who attend a certain meeting at a certain time, but from everyone. Equity and representation, I already talked about that. Local government has to advocate for its people. Has to. It's the only people in our entire government or systems of government that does that. Because you look eye to eye with them. Everyone deserves to be represented. Active inclusion of stakeholders. I just demonstrated a while ago, if no businessmen are going to the planning conferences, the big planning conferences for development of the city and the county, you're not getting the right stakeholders in. I mean, it's just blatantly obvious, right? So they gotta be included. We gotta be able to sustain 92 to 100% of our basic services using the general fund if we have to. You cannot depend on federal and state money forever. It never happens that way. What if you have another coronavirus, right? You're gonna print another $10 trillion or 40, what's a debt? 40 some odd trillion dollars? I mean, it's not gonna last forever, especially if another currency comes up in the rest of the world, which it is doing. So we gotta start looking ahead with practical prism glasses, not hope. And we got to look out for our people and advocate for them and start planning that way. And you can't have everything, but you can try, but you're not going to be able to do that. So we got to become practical. New business, get capital, and you'll get new business. It's very simple. It's easy. Housing, easy. You either build houses for a lower price, which means you lower the price of transportation, which means you got to go to the state and federal government. Then you'll get lower house pricing or lower price housing, or you got to get people paid more, which means you got to have growth. This is not hard, it's simple. You just got to admit that it's simple and then make those hard decisions, that's all. And we have to do that, and we're at the point we have to do that. Some of us are prepared to do that. And the question is, are you prepared to do that? I am. Thanks.
Liz, you're next.
I'm gonna try and follow my notes because I seem to do better when I do that than talking off the cuff. But before I do that, I just want to address housing is kind of my bailiwick, and so that's really what I want to accomplish for this county, because everything depends on housing, from our employees to our schools. Last statistic I heard, we were 500 students away from being in a funding crisis for our Corvallis schools. And why is that? Because families can't afford to live in Corvallis, they can't afford to live in Benton County. And that's super important to have places for people to live. And contrary to what some people think, if you just give people $50,000, they're still not going to be able to find housing because it's not here. And I know we want to pretend like we can build wherever we want to build, farmland, forest land, but 1,000 Friends of Oregon and their attorneys are going to have something different to say. It's really important when we speak about things, we actually understand what we're saying. Housing, I understand, and housing is the core of everything. I have created a regional housing solution, and we do have the DLCD giving us a $50,000 grant to start out to reach out to communities here locally. We don't need to pretend like we understand. We know where housing comes from. We have a wetland situation that's made it incredibly difficult for us to navigate these properties, and it makes it hard for any developers to develop because they have to work around those wetlands. That's not going away.
Yes, it can. It can go.
I also think there's an attitude problem here in the community, and I'm going to share a story with you. Mayor Johnson and I, when I was still helping him with his campaign, had lunch with an elected official here in Corvallis 2 years ago. And that elected official clearly and unequivocally said that they were anti-growth and anti-big business. It's time we move on from those outdated and out-of-touch ways. Growth is the way, and it will benefit everyone, namely our business community.
Nancy, I think you're next.
Well, my desire is to see the best version of Benton County possible. My vision is a healthy, vibrant, and inclusive community. Again, my focus areas for the next 4 years are homelessness, mental health, planning, and climate and environmental justice. And we're going to address those issues through focusing our priorities and leveraging partnerships. And I'll say these time limits are here for very good reasons, but they're very restrictive. So if anybody has any more questions, I'm happy to talk, happy to have a phone call, happy to go to coffee. Just contact me and let me know. Thank you again to everyone who showed up tonight. Thank you to the Chamber. And I also want to say thank you to all the candidates that are here tonight. Thank you, all of you, for being here willing to stand up to serve the community.
Sarah, you're next.
Yeah, so I am really grateful to have been able to raise my kids in Corvallis, have the support and a community that really allowed my family to thrive. And so my vision as your state representative will be to create a community in our district and across Oregon where families and businesses have the supports they need to succeed and thrive. And my priorities are really wrapped around making sure that the pieces are in place to make that happen. And there are things that I've heard from our community that are our priorities. So childcare. Right now, childcare is not affordable and it's not accessible, especially if you are someone who works a job that does not fit the typical 5-day-a-week, 9-to-5 schedule. And a lot of business owners don't work that schedule. So we need to be creative about how we support childcare and how we support the people who want to start childcare businesses so that we can meet that need. We need to build an education system that supports kids and students kindergarten through whatever path they want to take after graduating from high school. And we need to make sure that education system supports our teachers at the same time. We've seen strikes happen across our state. We need to pay our teachers. And I want to start by looking at our 30-year-old model for deciding on funding for school. We have a model right now that doesn't address the needs of our students and our teachers and our schools today. We need to work at housing, and we've all said this a lot of times. I want to make sure that we build a housing community that's sustainable and meets the needs of our workers at various income levels, and that we have the investments in place to build an infrastructure to encourage building of that housing where it's accessible to public transportation and is walkable and bikeable, and is a community that supports our families and our workers into the future. I, among all my identities, mom, school board member, activist, I'm a trained scientist. I have a PhD. I like data. I like evidence-driven decisions. And as your state representative, that is the approach I'm going to take. I want to make good decisions to make sure we're supporting the growth of our community so that all of our workers and families can thrive. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak today.
Gabe, you're next. The microphone is heading your way.
All right. Well, I just want to add my voice into the thank you all for being here tonight, and for those who may watch the recording afterwards. It looks like there's a recording. I'll start by saying that my vision for the county going forward is one of partnership. It's a word I mentioned before, and it's a word I'm going to continue to use. You can go to the back where my stuff is. You can see some of my literature and see my endorsements. These are people who I am ready to partner with, a lot of them local, people from across the county, to get stuff done right away. And as I mentioned at the top in my opening remarks, the three things that I'm really focusing on during my campaign, granted, not the only things I care about, but the three things that I'm focusing on for this campaign are public engagement, climate action, and affordable housing. For public engagement, I really think that the county needs to up its game when it comes to public engagement. That's why I have committed to a town hall in every community every year, and a town hall for our local businesses as well. I want the county to be able to have meetings that people can attend. So not just meetings during your average workday, but meetings when if you work a full day, you can still go and tell the county how you feel